Then we have the Coronation Gospel. So Charlemagne was a sincere admirer of learning, arts, and classical culture. Unfortunately, this is a bit of the blind leading the blind. They're not entirely certain what classical culture was because so much of it was lost in the 400 years from the fall of Rome until we get to Charlemagne. Now, he is going to develop, for example, Carolingian minuscule, which is the grandfather of lowercase letters. And here, when we look at the images, when we look at the text, first of all, you'll notice the text, the words are not separated, as I mentioned earlier. This is meant to be read out loud. That's how you would determine what the individual words are. But here, the image is meant to illustrate, not to meditate. It helps in reading the text. This is from the Palace School scriptorium established at Aachen. The pages are violet. The lettering in this gospel is going to be in silver, which we saw in late antiquity. This may have actually been Charlemagne's personal book, so it may have been provided to him. And here we're looking specifically at St. Matthew, our third St. Matthew, after looking at Matthew of the Book of Doro and Matthew from the Lindisfarne Gospel. Here we're seeing it again in continental Europe. And this is in a very Greco-Roman style. We see a lot of illusionism, in other words, three-dimensionality, and modeling, typically with color rather than with black and white. So we see highlights and shadows rather than line. We see a very heavy form, modeled after images of of the philosophers of antiquity, really placing Matthew here as a philosopher, as a great thinker, rather than simply a vessel. And as we look at the image, you'll see he's holding a horn that would hold his ink, but also the upturned horn symbolizes that the word of God would pass into that and through the ink, through his pen, and onto the page. Matthew looks very realistic here. The clothing he wears is typically Roman. The furniture, the seat, and the lectern desk are typically Roman as well. So they are basing it on this sort of classical tradition that we would associate with Charlemagne.